Naked, you are simple as one of your hands. Smooth, earthy, small, transparent, round. You have moon lines, apple pathways. Naked, you are slender as a grain of wheat. Naked, you are blue as a night in Cuba. You have vines and stars in your hair. Naked, you are spacious and yellow as summer in a golden church.
Today I stretched out next to a pure young woman, as if at the shore of a white ocean, as if at the center of a burning star of slow space.
I like for you to be still. It is as though you were absent, and you hear me from far away, and my voice does not touch you. It seems as though your eyes had flown away, and it seems that a kiss had sealed your mouth.
And it was at that age, poetry arrived in search of me. I don't know where it came from winter or a river. I don't know how or when. No, they were not voices. They were not words, nor silence. But from a street I was summoned, from the branches of night, abruptly from the others, among violent fires, or returning alone. There I was, without a face, and it touched me. A truly great poet has the ability to touch people's hearts and capture universal emotions. He transcends language, class, gender, and time barriers. I'm Jennifer Beals, and in the next half hour, we're going to hear the words and explore the life of Pablo Neruda, the author of the poem that I just read, and one of the most passionate poets of this century. We will also look at a film inspired by the life and spirit of Pablo Neruda. The Postman, Il Postino, one of 1995's best-loved movies, has brought a wave of people to the theaters and encouraged many to find the poetry in their own lives. Set in an Italian village, it is the story of a simple man, a beautiful woman he's loved from afar, and the poet Pablo Neruda, who changed their lives forever.
Well, it's about the encounter between Pablo Neruda, the poet, and his postman. What the story is about is a man who discovers himself through poetry, discovers love and politics and everything, and finally becomes a whole man through poetry.
Metafore.
Che sarebbe?
Le metafore.
The movie The Postman, Il Postino, which has delighted both critics and audiences alike, is the first foreign-language film nominated for Best Picture since Cries and Whispers in 1973 and Z in 1969. Winning an Academy Award for the enchanting original dramatic score, the movie has also brought a groundswell of support for the late Massimo Troisi, the actor who so beautifully plays Mario, the postman.
Scusi un attimo, me lo può firmare?
The Italian actor Massimo Troisi discovered the book in the Italian version, and he fell in love with the character of Mario, the postman, and he bought the rights to produce the film to my agent, and then he suggested Michael Radford as the director, and that was the beginning of it.
Uno.
Massimo wanted to work from many years, I remember, with Michael.
Numero uno. Onde alla cala di sotto.
The reason because he picked the book is because immediately he understood that there was a role for him.
Cinque. Reti tristi di mio padre.
You know, he was basically involved with a big passion.
Me lo rende unico, maestro.
Massimo Troisi, who was one of the great stars of Italian cinema. He's very funny. He was a comedian, made low-budget comedies, and wanted to make a a different kind of a picture. Well, Massimo had always had heart problems since he was a small boy, and they suddenly got very much worse. And he collapsed in the first week of shooting, and it became evident that he needed a transplant. And I asked him not to go on with the picture, although in my heart, of course, I wanted him to go on. And he asked me how he was, and I said, "Tu sei strepidoso," which means, "You're fantastic." He's very, very courageous.
He loved this book. He wanted to make this a movie. I mean, he more than anything else, he, gave up everything ultimately for the film. And in some way, I feel like keeper of the flame, with this film. I want to keep that flame burning, and I want people to, know who he was and discover him the same way that we did.
By some, Massimo is often thought of as just a comedian, which is interesting, especially since he won the Best Actor prize in Venice for the dramatic film Che ora è? What Time Is It?, directed by Ettore Scola in 1989. Certainly Massimo was a great comic, great and rare, not least of all because his comedy was never at another's expense. He was also intelligent and erudite, but never pretentious. In the end, he was not simply a comic, but an actor, and above all, a humanist whose work is deceptively simple. Massimo was the first person to introduce me to Neruda's work. He was so excited about it that his excitement was infectious. I think that he was so drawn to Neruda's work because it too is deceptively simple in the way that it celebrates the beauty of everyday objects and people. In the film, Pablo Neruda is played by Philippe Noiret, the well-known French actor and frequent star of Italian cinema. Neruda was born in 1904 in a town near the rainforests of southern Chile. His volume of poetry, 20 Poems of Love and a Song of Despair, was published when he was only 20. It was the first time a Latin poet had written about love in a style that was accessible both to the masses and impressive to the scholars. The popularity of this work is still felt today throughout the world. From 1924 until after his death, over 500 volumes of Neruda's work have been published. Neruda was and will always be known as a poet of passion.
When I first saw The Postman and learned about Pablo Neruda, who I'd never heard of prior to seeing the film, I called somebody in our industry who's a very famous, wonderful movie star, who's also the most literate actress that I know, and that's Julia Roberts. Julia is an incredibly voracious reader. If there's a subject, that I need to know about, and I don't want to go through the, the bother of research, and she's in between a movie, I can always call her. We've developed a nice friendship over the years. So I called her and I said, look, I just, found this movie. It's about Pablo Neruda. She goes, Pablo Neruda, he's my favorite poet.
We initially wanted to publish a book of Pablo Neruda's poetry, the 10 or so poems that are in the movie. And then we decided that it would be fun to ask a couple of people to read them.
The next day, like a schoolgirl coming to, the principal's office, in comes Julia Roberts, with 6 volumes of Pablo Neruda's poetry.
And it's amazing how many fans of Pablo Neruda there were, and how many fans of this movie, because they all had to see the movie and agree to do it.
That gave me the inspiration, that point there, to say, why don't I get Julia and round up some of the other people, movie stars that I know, and when we do the soundtrack album, get some of these great movie stars and people in the music industry to do poetry and recite it, to the music from the film.
So, in the space of the last 2 weeks, I've directed Julia Roberts, Ralph Fiennes, Miranda Richardson, Madonna, Wesley Snipes, Sam Jackson, Andy Garcia, Willem Dafoe, Glenn Close, a great galaxy of movie stars.
He has that universal appeal of being very human, of loving women, of loving life, of loving his fellow man.
The passion that Neruda exuded in his writing made him the object of great affection by women all over the world.
Donna. Maria Concita, donna. Angela, donna. Jean-Marie che è uomo, donna.
Donna.
Donna, sapevo. Questo pure donna.
In Cile anche le donne si interessano di politica.
L'amiga fue tu madre selva cuando temblaba de mi amor primero.
Married 3 times, Neruda found his final and truest love in Matilda Urrutia. He built his home in Santiago La Chascona in homage to her.
Y en la vieja pared sorprendieron mi amor, tu humilde caricia es como el cariño, primer querido.
Nuda, sei semplice come una delle tue mani, liscia, terrestre, minima, rotonda, trasparente, hai linee di luna, sentieri di mela. Nuda, sei delicata come il grano nudo. Nuda, sei azzurra come la notte a Cuba. Hai rampicanti.
You know, when you read those poems or you hear them recited, I mean, if they played this for me in high school, I would have been attentive. You know, I would have been a good English student. I might have even gotten an A for a change instead of a D-, because this is like great stuff. And the other great attribute, and I tell this to any high school student, is your dating quotient would have gone way up.
Che stai facendo?
His poems have been used by men and women all over the world to aid romantic intentions.
Una lancia che si sfila, un'acqua che prorompe. Il tuo riso è un'onda d'argento repentina.
He speaks from the heart, so his love poetry makes you want to fall in love. I remember the poem, Tonight I Can Write the Saddest Lines. You know, when I read that poem, I think of all the women I've ever lost in my life, and it's heartbreaking. It gives me goosebumps to think about it.
Leaning into afternoons, I fling my sad nets to the sea that is thrashed by your oceanic eyes. The birds of night peck at the first stars that flash like my soul when I love you.
If I look at the crystal moon, at the red branch of the slow autumn at my window, if I touch near the fire the impalpable ash, or the wrinkled body of the log, everything carries me to you.
Don't go far off, not even for a day, because I don't know how to say it. A day is long, and I will be waiting for you, as in an empty station when the trains are parked off somewhere else, asleep.
The night turns on its invisible wheels, and you are pure beside me as a sleeping ember.
No one else, love, will sleep in my dreams. You will go, we will go together over the waters of time. No one else will travel through the shadows with me. Only you, evergreen, ever sun, ever moon.
Gli chiedo solamente la dedica sopra il libro e basta. Così quando prendo lo stipendio vado a Napoli e faccio vedere alle ragazze che niente di meno io sono amica di Neruda, il poeta dell'amore.
Il poeta del popolo.
And he suddenly felt that what I really ought to be doing with my life as a poet, if it means anything, is to become a voice and speak for all these people who nobody ever listened to. They had no voices. I want to be a voice for them. I want to be a voice for all the dead that formed this continent, for all things that don't have a voice.
Ho sentito allora che dovevo scrivere qualcosa che accompagnasse le lotte degli uomini e fosse la poesia dei maltrattati. E fu così che nacque il canto general.
Neruda is also renowned for his poems celebrating the struggle of everyday life and the beauty of nature and everyday objects.
The smell of barbershops makes me sob out loud. I want nothing but the repose of either stones or of wool. I want to see no more establishments, no more gardens, nor merchandise, nor glass, nor elevators.
From artichokes to objects dealing with the sea, Neruda's voice is that of simplicity and everyday concerns.
It happens that I am tired of my feet and my nails and my hair and my shadow. It happens that I am tired of being a man.
Aquí nella isola è il mare, il quanto mare. Esce da sé a ogni istante. Dice che sì, dice che no, poi che no.
Neruda identifies himself with the ocean because of the internal movements of the waves. It is something that lives permanently in the rhythm of his poems.
In azzurro, in schiuma, in galoppo. Dice che no, poi che no. Non puede stare tranquillo. Me chiamo mar, repite, appiccicandosi a una pietra senza riuscire a convincerla.
It is not only that, but it is also the urge of collecting marine objects. Ships. Things from ships. Compasses. And at the end of it all, he made his house in front of the ocean. It looks like a ship run aground on the beach.
They popped her with cigarette ends and with burnt corks and rolled on the tavern floor in raucous laughter. She did not speak, since speech was unknown to her. Her eyes were the colour of faraway love. Her arms were matching topazes. Her lips moved soundlessly in coral light.
De 7 perros verdes, de 7 tigres verdes, de 7 mares verdes. La recoge, la besa.
He really had a kind of love affair with objects. I mean, he surrounded himself with them. As you know, the house in Isla Negra is full of them. What I realized when I went in the house was that what I was looking at all around me was the vocabulary of his poems. All the objects in the house appear in his poems. They have cameo parts in his poems. They come on. And these objects were precious to him.
What I appreciate in a house is the spirit that sometimes you find in them. And in Neruda's house, sometimes in some corners and rooms, under some lights and shadows, you can feel the presence of his inspiration.
Neruda was consistently appointed to government positions. He was consulate to Europe, Asia, and Mexico. He also served in the Chilean Senate.
He taught us, Chilean, to relate to things and to history in a creative way. We shouldn't accept the reality as it is. He came from a very poor family, and he never forgot where he came from. He remained true to his own people.
It was during periods of exile that many of Neruda's greatest works evolved.
Having worked with Amnesty International and in the human rights world for so long, I've known so many writers in exile who to me are probably the most interesting creative writers.
And Neruda's life was a series of journeys away from Chile, but always returning to Chile.
In the 70s, Neruda was a candidate for the Chilean presidency, served as ambassador to France, and won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Much of Chilean reality is defined by Neruda.
I've always been enormously impressed at the response of people in Latin American countries to their sort of native poets. And certainly in Chile, one senses that Neruda is a national hero. You couldn't imagine a poet in the United States having that kind of stature.
It's very unusual. If you're in a small town in Chile and you go into, say, the local bar and you bring up Neruda's name, somebody there will say, ah, Pablo, Don Pablo, and they'll have a Neruda poem by heart.
Chilean musicians are inspired by Neruda's words, incorporating them into lyrics. And Chilean poets and writers recognize the path that Neruda paved for them.
Spanish American literature was not well known in the world 50 years ago, 30 years ago. And it has become well known only lately. How much Neruda has done, the way he's opened for us, and all the new writers.
In 1988, the Pablo Neruda Foundation began to honor young poets and keep the spirit of his writing alive.
Pablo Neruda is for Latin America, and especially to Chile. Something is real and is as much a part of the land as the Andes Mountains. He's a poet that gives identity to a continent and to a country. Pablo Neruda is the greatest poet in the history of the Spanish language.
The Chilean premiere of The Postman, Il Postino, was a time for celebration in Neruda's homeland.
In a funny kind of way, you know, when you make a movie, the nicest part of it is having the idea of making the movie and then imagining yourself at the premiere. And so this was the premiere I always imagined myself at, here in Chile, above all others.
L'ultima cosa que tengo que decir es que, como todos los artistas,
for me, it was also very important to see the film in my own country. So the story now found its place in reality. And I have the impression that the people follow the rhythm of the story. They laughed quite a lot, tenderly, and then they were very moved at the end.
Prendi. Ti potrà servire per le metafore.
I was so happy to see such a familiar face, and the audience here in Chile, they were fascinated. They accepted Noiré as Neruda, and to accept somebody as Neruda in this country, it's a miracle, and they did. Even the politicians.
The Postman, Il Postino, has been embraced not only by Chileans, but by viewers worldwide, creating millions of new Neruda fans.
I come from the South. I was born to sing these sorrows.
From coffee houses to the White House, everyone is celebrating Neruda.
Well, now that I've seen the film, I think I would be inspired to read more of his poetry.
I felt that I was being allowed to watch an episode from the life of Neruda rather than watching the movie.
I was fascinated by the way he touched a young man's life.
I want to go and read some of his poems now. I really do.
Here, surrounding the island, there's sea. But what sea? It's always overflowing.
Tonight I can write the saddest lines. Write, for example, the night is shattered and the blue stars shiver in the distance.
She was a mermaid who had lost her way. The taunts flowed over her glistening flesh, obscenities drenched her golden breast.
If little by little you stop loving me, I shall stop loving you, little by little.
Close to you is close to me, and your absence is far from everything.
And it was at that age poetry arrived in search of me. I don't know where it came from winter or a river.
Everyone pries under your sheets. Everyone interferes with your loving. They say terrible things about a man and a woman.
Beautiful nude. Equally beautiful your feet, arched by primeval tap of wind or sound.
Come si diventa poeta?
Prova a camminare lentamente lungo la riva sino alla baia, guardando attorno a te.
Mi vengono le metafore.
Sicuramente.
Leaning into the afternoons, I fling my sad nets to that sea that is thrashed by your oceanic eyes. The birds of night peck at the first stars that flash like my soul when I love you.
Y fue a esa edad. Llegó la poesía a buscarme. No sé de dónde salió, de invierno, río. No eran voces, no eran palabras, ni silencio.
I did not know what to say. My mouth had no way with names. My eyes were blind, and something started in my soul. Fever or forgotten wings, and I made my own way, deciphering that fire, and I wrote the first faint line. Faint without substance, pure nonsense, pure wisdom of someone who knows nothing. And suddenly I saw the heavens unfastened and open, planets palpitating, plantations, shadow perforated, riddled with arrows, fire and flowers, the winding night, the universe.